committee staff are still going through the thousands and thousands of pages. In fact, it took a long time just to download the documents themselves. Our understanding is that the Republican chairman, of course, Comer, who is an ally of Trump's, is in negotiations regarding when, how, and if certain documents would be released. And so in terms of timeline, it's hard to say at this moment. But I can tell you that House Democrats are committed to transparency, to justice, and to pursuing justice against any individuals who are identified in those documents, including the president, who may have committed crimes.
And Congressman, that's the point I think is important to not lose sight of, because this is where this whole thing began. Because, look, you can take it back to a little tweet from a guy named Elon Musk who said, oh, by the way, Donald Trump, you're in the Epstein files. And then the story just kind of rolled from there. So I don't think we should lose sight of that. Number two, we should not lose sight of the fact that this DOJ spent 2 days basically, setting up a convicted pedophile so that she could get a nice little slide into a better prison situation and life, so that she could then also at the same time level up what we saw play out today. When you look at that and you juxtapose against the documents, admittedly, you have not had a chance to review the documents yet, got that. But this set of Epstein documents that are going to come in that you're going to be reviewing, where do you go? How do you begin to connect dots for the American people? And how much of that, to Elise's point, are Democrats willing to put out on the street? Because you do have the power. Both the Republicans and the Democrats can decide whether or not they want to release what they want to release.
Well, I'll just say this for the Democrats. We are committed to full transparency and disclosure. So, let the chips fall where they may. If people have committed crimes, I don't care what letter is behind your name in terms of whether and how you've served as a public official. The whole point of releasing these files is that the public is demanding to know if there are individuals in powerful positions who've committed crimes, especially against young women and children. And so it's our responsibility to justice and to the victims to release whatever names are in there, including potentially the president's, which Pam Bondi herself told the president he appears in these files multiple times.
Congresswoman, there is a subpoena to have Ghislaine Maxwell come testify before your committee. And I wonder, given the transcript that you have had a chance to read today, I'm sure, the deputy AG interviewing Maxwell, do you think that's even worthwhile? Do you think that there is something you can gain from Maxwell that somehow changes the contours of this case?
Well, I think that obviously she's a completely uncredible witness. She is seeking a pardon right now from federal felony charges and sex trafficking that she has been convicted and sentenced to many, many years in prison for. And she's going to do whatever she thinks she has to do and tell whatever lies and stories and flattery, as we've seen in this transcript, that she thinks is going to get her a pardon with the president. So I think, as a witness, she's obviously not a credible witness. However, I do believe that there is a reason to pull any witness in front of the committee to have them testify under oath, to talk about all of these issues, the crimes, but certainly not to grant any kind of clemency for the crimes that she has committed. But I think it's, our job as Congress is to represent the people and to create space for the people to lay their eyes on individuals who are in power and who have abused the justice system and to make up their own minds. And so I do support subpoenaing her and bringing her before the committee, just like the other individuals who have been subpoenaed.
I think that's important for a number of reasons, but probably the most important of which, Congresswoman, is how we started the conversation this evening, and that is the big setup. That what we're seeing now is the production part of the big setup. We saw it during the Mueller era, and you had the Attorney General, Bill Barr, at that time coming out and sort of salting the earth, right? So nothing would grow that could possibly entwine President Trump in anything Robert Mueller would come up with after the fact. Same storyline here. I don't know how otherwise you can sort of see this, is the administration getting out in front, doing everything that it has done up to this point, so that when these documents, and there will be more because there are more documents, do get released as the MAGA Republicans want. I mean, let's not lose sight of this. You know, they may be slightly quiet today. So MAGA, have you given up on really wanting to know the bottom line, or are you satisfied? I don't think you're satisfied. But this setup point to me is important. So what the Congress does next, and I was glad to hear you talk about Ms. Maxwell the way you did, is that everything has to be on the table here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think it's important to talk about the timeline we're living in. First of all, the public demanded the release of these files because there are powerful people potentially implicated, including the president. Donald Trump said multiple times publicly he would release the files. We know from reporting that the Department of Justice informed the president that he was mentioned in the files. We know that potentially hundreds of FBI and DOJ agents were assigned to go through these files and to identify whether or not the president was in individual pages and implicated. And then Donald Trump spent weeks telling the public that the files didn't exist. And as a result of that, his allies in Congress, Mike Johnson, decided to shut down Congress rather than have transparency in front of the American people and continue to have to discuss this. They sent us home early for August recess. So now, because Democrats have subpoenaed the files and we put them on notice, they are essentially creating a smokescreen, not only to control the narrative, but to try to appease their supporters who are going to continue to demand transparency. So we're not letting this go. There's clearly crimes implicated. There's clearly a cover-up. It's very clear the Department of Justice is implicated in this cover-up. And I have zero confidence that my Republican colleagues across the aisle are engaging in good faith to actually provide transparency to the American people. They are also implicated in the cover-up through the congressional process itself, and we're going to continue to hold them accountable.